Listen to their stories before bed.
I often dream of that spring in Florence. On February 15th, 1564, just after midnight, my first cry echoed in the baptistery of Santa Croce. My father, Vincenzo, was a wool merchant, but he'd often pluck at a lute at night. Said music held the math of the cosmos, just as the heavens held God's own melodies. As a child, I'd crouch in the apothecary's wooden shelves, counting herbs, watching dust dance in sunbeams. Those floating specks fascinated me more than abacusses. My mother called me an unruly little madman. But who could have guessed this kid who took clocks apart and stared at flowing water would one day shake the world's understanding of the universe? In 1581, I enrolled at the University of Pisa to study medicine, as my father wished. But in anatomy class, while others focused on beating hearts, I wondered, how do muscles pull bones? When professors droned about Galen's theories, I scribbled sketches of falling objects instead. Once, in Pisa's cathedral, I watched a bronze chandelier swing in the draught. How long had it been swinging? Centuries? Millennia? But I noticed its swings took nearly the same time each cycle. I timed my own pulse, rigged a string with a lead weight, and found a truth. The period of a pendulum depends only on its length. Later, they'd call it the Galilean pendulum, but back then, professors scoffed. A medical student playing at physics. By 1589, I finally landed a math professorship at the University of Padua. There, students didn't memorize old texts, they asked why. At my lectures, I'd roll wooden balls down inclined planes explaining, objects of different weights fall at the same speed. If air resistance is ignored, a student yelled, Aristotle said heavier ones hit first. So I tied a wooden ball to a lead one. If heavy falls faster, the light would slow it. If light is faster, the heavy would drag, but they fall together, so Aristotle was wrong. The room erupted. A student waved physics in my face. You dare question authority? I took the book, closed it gently. Even authorities err. Like these printed words, if they're wrong, they must be corrected. What truly opened my eyes to the cosmos was that summer of 1609. Word. Spread of a Dutch spyglass. I rushed to improve it, grinding lenses, fitting copper tubes, till, one August night, I turned it skyward. The moon, deemed perfect by the church, was pockmarked with craters and valleys, just like Earth. I sketched lunar phases, then turned to Jupiter. There, 4 tiny stars lingered, always near the planet. Satellites, I realized. Students crowded behind me, gasping. They orbit Jupiter like servants. I nodded, faithful attendants, circling the sun with their lord. The storm came swiftly. Studying Venus, I saw its phases shift like the moon's. That could only happen if Venus orbited the sun. I wrote Sidereus Nuncius Starry Messengers, sent copies to Venice's Duke. The book sold out, but the church recoiled. In 1616, the Inquisition summoned me. Heliocentrism is heresy, they declared. I knelt on stone, kissing the Pope's hand. I only wished to make truth clearer. They seized my manuscripts, warned me, stay away from the stars. Still, I wrote dialogue concerning the 2 chief world systems in 1632. I framed it as a debate, Salviati arguing for Copernicus, Simplicio for Ptolemy, Sagredo as the skeptic. It brimmed with data, no insults. But before printing, the Inquisition's warrant arrived. They called it marking the Pope. I was sentenced to lifelong imprisonment. In Rome's jail, I stared at stars through iron bars, thinking, can truth be a crime? Later, they moved me to a villa in Archicar, under house arrest. No university, no students. So I sat in my grape arbor, chair in hand, still calculating mechanics. Servants pleaded, "Sir, you should pray." I pointed to my inclined plane. Watching this ball roll distance proportional to Times Square, this is how I meet God. By 1638, I was blind, but I dictated 2 new sciences to my student Vincenzio, reciting notes. The seeds of science are sown. They'll grow on their own. On January 8, 1642, I died in my sleep. I touched my telescope, its copper tube, rusted, but the lens is still clear. I thought of Padua students cheering with telescopes, of that young man in Pisa challenging authority, of snow falling during my trial. What do I count my life's proudest act? Not toppling Aristotle, not discovering Jupiter's moons. It's proving. Truth isn't in books, nor in authority's mouth. It's in star charts, in repeated experiments, in every mind that dares ask, why? My strength, a wariness of common sense. People call sun orbits Earth common sense, but common sense can be a cage. I trusted data, used math to describe nature. That was my weapon against ignorance. My flaw? Perhaps stubbornness. When the church first warned me, I could have stayed silent. When students begged me to yield, I could have compromised. Courage I had in abundance, but wisdom? I lacked it then. To those who come after, do not fear to question. Do not cling to absolute truth. The universe never lies. Lies are what we tell ourselves when we close our eyes. If you stand at truth's edge, accused, scorned, remember. Like me, kneel. Use your eyes, your hands, your mind. Feel the shape of reality. For we are all children of the stars. And to seek, that is how we find our way home.